Good day, this is Terry Difazio, and you're watching Dial It Up. Today, my guests are returning from about a month previous. They demanded more time. They're hard to get along with, and they're very demanding on me. But it's great to have you back, Mark Higley and Vicki Strong.
Thank you, Terry.
Now they've redistricted you, haven't they?
Yes.
Oh, they've just redistricted you too? No.
Yes. Yep.
They did?
Me as well.
Okay.
Two-seat district now.
Yeah. So, what is your district called, Mark?
It's still Orleans Lamoille district,
Okay.
but it includes 3 more towns of Newport Center, Coventry, and Irisburg.
Okay. And you're what? You're Orleans 4?
Yes. So that's my new title. It was part of Caledonia, but that's taken away. So he went to a 2-seat district. I am in a 2-seat district going to 1. So now I have to run against, both of us are incumbents. We have to run against each other. So it's going to be a tough race. And I'm going to really work hard. I want to go back to Montpelier for some reason.
And we need you.
Thank you.
Yes, there has to be, in my opinion, needs to be some balance.
Yeah.
Yes.
But here's an off-the-wall question. Do you think they were redistricted for the right reason or the wrong reason?
Mark was on the committee.
I was on the committee. Redistricting, it's hard to say that it's not political. And I thought it was interesting that I had a certain representative write me and suggest that with VPIRG, Vermont Public Interest Research Group, they wanted to create another form of committee to initially do the redistricting. And they had some references to an independent committee that would initially, do the redistricting. And I looked into it, and the thing that's interesting is there's no such thing as an independent committee when it comes to redistricting. And so, it's tough. The majority is the majority, and, of course it's political.
Yes.
Because it was said to me, not here, but in other places, that this was a design to give Chittenden more votes.
Oh, they don't need more votes.
It's all based on population, or and Chittenden County's got the population, and we're losing it. So
Yeah, it seems
hard.
that way, doesn't it?
Yep.
There has to be more reason to be here,
Mhm.
and I sometimes feel that the state isn't helping us.
No. Well, when you think of the culture difference between Chittenden County and the Northeast Kingdom, it's just a huge difference. So they're pushing for certain policies that we, just won't work here. So it's not, in my mind, we have to somehow be able to stand up for how things affect us more, how some of these policies affect us.
Well, I think a good example of that is they created a youth council this past session, and they're going to be talking with the governor as far as some of the outcomes of what they discuss. And in that youth council, they had certain categories that they were going to be teamed up to discuss, and they were things like racism, climate change, all that. And being on the committee, I said, geez, wait, time out. What about kids in the Northeast Kingdom that still are involved with logging and farming and hunting? Shouldn't that be part of it? Shouldn't the traditional values and things that kids do in the rural areas be involved as well in this youth council? It was a bit of a push because they wanted the kids that were involved to be the ones that chose the categories, but we did come up with that particular phrase in the bill to consider some of the rural more rural professions. So anyway.
Yes, and Vermont is a very rural state. Anyway,
Yes.
regardless, it is. You look at our biggest city. How was it? 45,000 people. And when UVM is in, it's like 60,000. You know, over in New Hampshire, you know, that's pretty small.
Right.
Even in New Hampshire, their cities are much larger. You know.
Right, green energy is another big thing. Chittenden County keeps pushing green energy. Whereas here, where we have a long ways to drive, we have farmers, you know, using a lot of gas on the farm for different equipment, and the policies they're pushing there and it's so cold here. You know, a heat pump just not going to keep us warm. So it's just not even common sense for us. Much of what they want to push in Chittenden County, electric cars.
Electric vehicles.
You know, let them have them, okay? But don't mandate it up here. I mean, we have to get around.
Yeah, and I know somebody that's close to me just bought a Tesla, and I think they're a great car. They're absolutely amazing car, but you're not going to go very far with it.
That's right.
You know, you're going to need to find recharging stations, just like you would a gas station. In my opinion, I think hybrid cars are probably a smarter way to go, because I just drove one. It's like, wow, this is actually pretty good. I was going to ask you, do you guys know anything about this this amendment? What's it called? Proposal 5
Oh dear, yes.
that Governor Scott wants on the ballot November 5th. Do you guys know anything about that? Because I
boy.
still haven't figured out what it is. I'm
Oh,
reading
yeah.
the article.
Go ahead, Vicki.
All right, I should have brought the language. I thought about it earlier. The actual language of Proposal 5 is very general, it's very vague, and it purposely doesn't mention abortion or women, and yet they call it the Liberty Amendment, meaning because of the fear of Roe v. Wade being reversed, which it was, as we know, that now we need this constitutional amendment to protect a woman's right to abortion. The wording in the amendment has nothing to do with abortion, and it's so vague and so obscure that it's going to end up with a lot of different court battles. And it's going to cover a lot of areas that have nothing to do with abortion. But on the other hand, it also, here's one scenario they haven't even thought of yet. If you put this in the Constitution, that means we cannot legislate anything in the future about so-called reproductive rights. Let's say a young woman ends up expecting a baby. The man in the situation says, I want this baby. I don't want you to get an abortion. He can take her to court and stop an abortion and say, this is the man's reproductive right to this baby. So in the end, what they're saying could be reproductive rights for a woman could be the very opposite. So these scenarios can happen and will happen. And the other thing is that in Vermont, right now, we have no legislation at all that regulates abortion in any way, period. In other words, a lot of folks who choose want some bumpers around that. They want like parental notification if it's a minor, or they want an abortion clinic to be regulated, and they're not. We regulate young women getting tans and tanning booths, but we don't when it comes to abortion.
That doesn't make much sense, does it?
It makes no sense. So there's absolutely nothing. Let's say as we see science unfold, a baby can feel pain at 2 months in the womb, or at 6 weeks there's a heartbeat. You know, people are going to start seeing the humanity of these unborn children and say, we need to do something to at least regulate when an abortion can happen. And if we pass Proposal 5, that will be on the ballot in November, please vote no. Please vote no. There will be no opportunity as science unfolds and as even our sentiments, people's understanding of what abortion is, as it's changing, and it is changing across the country, then we will not be able to undo that constitutional amendment without a lot of work and effort. So it's not even necessary, Proposal 5. Doesn't even need to be on the ballot. We have unlimited, unregulated abortion already in Vermont, with nothing on the horizon that would regulate that in any way. So it's so vague, it's unnecessary, and I just encourage anyone who's out there listening, please vote no. Tell your friends to vote no.
Okay. Now that I understand what it is. Go ahead,
Well,
Mike.
again, I think maybe not word for word, but the initial wording is an individual's right to reproductive autonomy.
Yes.
And again, what does that mean? And it's my understanding too is it's not that clear, and that it's only going to get clearer when cases go to court.
Right.
So that's a concern. And like you said, Vicki, over the years, I've signed on to bills regarding parental notification, help with minors for therapy of some sort, because it's a
Counseling.
traumatic counseling issue. And my understanding, again, if this is enshrined in our Constitution, these sorts of bills won't come to the committees or the floor, and that is a concern. That there's got to be some middle ground. And again, like you said, I think it was age 57, which was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, is unfettered abortion in the state of Vermont. So Vermont is secure in its pro-choice initiatives, and I just wish there was a little bit more of a balance, somewhere in between some of what some of these other states are doing in Vermont.
Right.
I've got to tell you something that made me chuckle the other day. Somebody wrote, I won't say where, but somebody wrote, I don't want the people who are pro-choice to try to justify that when they're telling me I have to go get the jab. You're telling me you want choice, but yet you're going to mandate that I have to get this vaccine even though I'm afraid of it.
Right.
And so anyways, I thought that was somewhat ironic.
Yes.
Are you guys still familiar with the Vermont 802 Freedom Group?
Yes, somewhat. No, they've had numerous rallies across the state. I know a few people in it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
No, I just you had mentioned it earlier, and I did kind of do a little research on it, and I guess they started up during the pandemic, in a sense, mainly around the mask mandate. I looked at their mission and so on and so forth, and I'm glad to see that there's a somewhat of a conservative group out there getting started, because again, we're up against it with groups such as VPIRG, Vermont Public Interest Research Group, Conservation Voters of Vermont, Rights and Democracy, Main Street Alliance, the list goes on. And these other groups that I had mentioned are gaining more and more political influence in Montpelier. And if that's what it takes, I'm glad to see that there's a group out there that has a little bit more conservative leaning to help us out, I guess.
Well, when it came to the government mandates, I think it was rather interesting to see that a lot of states, state by state basis, finally said, no, we're not going to do this anymore.
Right.
The way you're implementing this doesn't make any sense, and no one's being protected anyway.
That's right.
For example, the one I always go back to was whether you believe that this pandemic is as horrible as they say it is, and in some cases it is, and in some cases it isn't. Why should I not be allowed to go to church, even though I don't go to church, and I don't care if you want to go to church, great. But why should I be told you can't go to church, but you can go buy a gun or you can go to a liquor store?
I know.
That is what I think has really pissed off a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is violating the Constitution. I believe if anything else comes up like this in the future, many churches will resist and in fact stay open, and we'll see how that would play out.
Well, there was a church that we went to in Marco Island, Florida, and what they did was they saw what was going down and how they were told you can't go to church, but you can go do these other things. And finally, a couple of these churches said, to heck with this. We're just going to stay open. We don't care. And guess what? The governor backed them.
Right.
So what legislation do you see that was left over that you wish could have been worked on?
Yeah.
That's a tough one for me,
I know.
Terry, again, because, and I think I mentioned this the last time we were here, the majority is a majority, and they're the ones that set the agenda. So again, for us to look at bills that we've sponsored or co-sponsored, they just don't see the light of day a lot of times. And I can talk more about bills that I've fought over the years that I think are going to hurt Vermont. And I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but I mean, it's been 4 or 5 years now that they've pushed to have contractors registered. And being a contractor of over 40 years, and especially in the rural Vermont area, I don't belong to an association. Most of the contractors that I knew no, don't. And for them to be required to register, which is a form of licensure, you have to be current with all federal and state taxes, child support payments, you name it. And most of the people that I've even recently talked to around here don't even realize that that's a proposal and that it was passed and that, starting next year, they're going to have to register. And again, it's a mandatory contract piece to it, which the only other mandated profession in Vermont that requires a contract is funeral directors. So again, it's things like that where we think it supposedly started out as a consumer protection bill. But, my point all along the way was this was addressed through the Attorney General's office. And beef up the Attorney General's office if they're not getting what the public needs to get. And lo and behold, in this bill, there's 2 new Office of Professional Regulation employees and 1 new Attorney General employee under the Consumer Protection Division. So we've got 3 new state employees under that one bill.
So in other words, we have 3 new bureaucrats.
Yes.
And the you see, in my opinion, the purpose of a bureaucracy is to create more bureaucracy and keep it going. But that seems what is happening here, correct?
Correct. And of course, the excuse that they use, at least on the 2 OPR individuals, is they're going to be paid for by the fees from the registration of the contractors. But again, it's I've also read studies by universities across the country as far as this licensure scheme throughout the country that is looking for public protection to some degree really isn't working. It doesn't work. All it does is increase the cost for the general public for whatever product the individual's being asked to license for. So that's something to consider as well. Is it really worth the bureaucracy, the extra role of the government to regulate and so on? Is it really doing what it's intended to do?
Right.
As a good friend of mine that will remain nameless, a good comrade of mine, has said, some of these people are just grant-sucking chair warmers. And it seems to be the case, doesn't it? They need more studies and they need more of this, and the only thing that seems to be growing is the bureaucracy.
That's right.
But speaking of bureaucracies, the federal government supposedly has given us a break on federal taxes on gasoline. And I don't know, I think it was supposed to go on for 30 or 90 days or something like that. Yet July 1st, Vermont went and upped our gas tax 4.5 cents, was it? Did you guys hear about this? And
Yeah, Mark did some research on it. I just know vaguely.
Yeah, so this is about 10 years ago, the legislature passed, and I'm not sure if it was in the transportation bill or whatever, but this quarterly look at the gas prices and either an increase or a decrease. And what they were looking at is as the price of gas went up, people used less gas. So they were losing money in the transportation fund to improve roads and bridges and all that. So the provision was that as the gas prices went up, so did the tax. And, I, to be honest with you, it was 10 years ago, don't really remember all the ins and outs of that legislation, but that's where that piece came in. And if the next quarters see the price go down, then that gas tax supposedly will go down. I guess to go along with that, though, I'd like to say that something that I've signed on to and talked about for a number of years now is these electric cars, the more and more they're pushing these, don't pay a tax. So shouldn't there be some form of tax? And I think at one point it was considered that the average vehicle spends about $130 to $160 a year on gas tax. So maybe there should be a surcharge on electric vehicles to help out for the road improvements and bridges and all that. But of course, the majority, again, talks about how we don't want to disincentivize the purchase of electric vehicles. So that hasn't happened. But I think as time goes on and more of these electric vehicles do get out there, and we notice our transportation budget going up, of course, but the money coming from the gas revenue decreasing, something's gonna have to happen.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, infrastructure is extremely important. I mean, I see a lot of construction going on, but some of the roads that my wife and I have driven on recently are like, oh my gosh, these are awful. Just go up to Derby,
Yeah.
really.
There's a lot of construction going on based on the ARPA money we got, the federal funds that have come in, investing in the infrastructure. So I'm hoping that we'll see some improvements in this, but this money that came in is specifically for those kind of things.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm all for infrastructure. You can't have bridges falling down, and
No.
you can't have roads with that are incredible disrepair. So at any rate, let's move along. WCX reported the other day that the governor has stated that if the city of Newport comes up with a plan, that the state of Vermont will help them with the hole in the ground we have here.
Right.
And do you guys know anything about that? Because I'm certainly at a loss.
It's long overdue. I'm sure the local representatives here, Woody Page, Mike Marcotte, and of course, select board and whatnot, mayor, I'm sure they've really been pressing on that issue and asking for funding. So I hope there will be a good plan, and that hole has been there way too long. And even though Mark and I live a ways away from Newport, we come here regularly. I come here to shop and such. So, and it's a great tourist spot. It's a great tourist spot from Canada and from the south. And we need to improve this area much more than it has been.
Yeah, in defense of the city, and I've never put the blame on the city. That's owned federally. That property is owned by the feds because of what happened with EB5.
Right.
And I'll tell you, what was there before was a fire hazard. It was a huge fire hazard. But anyways, I know some ins and outs about that, and I'm glad that they tore it down.
Yeah.
Now maybe we can do something with it. You've traveled all over the country recently, correct?
Yes, yes.
Now, compared to other states that you went to,
Yes.
where do you think Vermont stands economically compared to these other states?
Yeah, thank you for that great question, Terry. It turned out to be a 5,040-mile trip across the country to South Dakota, through the Midwest, into the South. And interestingly, in Vermont, we don't have billboards. And I think that's nice.
Go to Florida.
Exactly. So you leave Vermont and you start heading into other states, and there's billboards, whether it's for Wall Drug across South Dakota, or just a lot of billboards that were pro-life, pro-patriotic, just pro-America. And I was just like really uplifted to see there's a lot of momentum going on out there for more conservative values, and it's growing. And so just by seeing that on these billboards, many, many billboards, there's a lot going on outside of Vermont. How we stay in such a little bubble, I'm not sure. New Hampshire's becoming very more conservative. In fact, they have legislation going on to secede from the country.
Yeah.
And apparently it has some backing. But what I see across the rest of the country, these states that are embracing more conservative values, which are the foundation of our country, really, Terry, when it comes to free enterprise and just freedom in general. Those states flourish with prosperity. They have a lower tax base. Vermont has the third, as last I knew, the third highest tax base in the country, tax burden. And so it's no wonder many people leave. They retire other places. Young people don't stay here. And that's a shame, because we're a beautiful state. And we have a lot to offer, and it's a wonderful place to live, but can we afford it? And that's the bottom line. And so we see, Mark sees as well, I'll let you chime in, we see a tax burden that's growing and not decreasing, and it's going the wrong way, and it's getting to the point, I believe, of either collapse or just people are going to throw their hands up and be either angry or despairing, and that's not good. So good things are happening in the rest of the country. I hope we see a turnaround here. We need a more balanced, State House, like you said, Terry, and I'll let Mark comment as well.
No, I think you said it well, Vicki. The thing that I've seen in the past couple of years in particular is whether it's this contractor bill or other bills that are out there, the intent may be well-deserved, but you look at it as growing government or the discussion around where's the money coming from. And I don't know, it seems like almost every bill now that they don't know where the money's coming from, they said, well, we need to find another a source of revenue. We need to tax the wealthy. We need, it's rather than, myself, we have to live within our means, whatever it is. And if I want something extra, that means I've got to take on another job or work later or whatever it might be. But it just seems to me that in Montpelier, there's this sense that, oh, this bill's good, this bill's needed, this bill's good, that bill's good. And in the end, like you say, it all adds up to costing Vermonters money. And you're right. Is it going to be a place that, only the wealthy that love Vermont so much come up here and can live? And it's it's concerning to me that we're doing that in Montpelier.
And let me just, a little shout out to a situation that happened in our State House in the Senate. We don't see the Senate much. We don't hear what happens there. But it did get out, and there's an actual clip of it, of a senator when talking about the clean heat standard, which is basically pushing green energy, electric cars and such, heat pumps, and not taking into account what that would do to our fixed incomes, those of us who are on a fixed income, et cetera, how that would affect us. The senator actually said, let them get a blanket.
Yes.
Okay, hello. That's like let them eat cake.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Let them get a blanket. He said it, and it is on tape. So I'm hoping Vermonters are waking up. The people who are making these decisions in our State House are not mindful enough of how it's affecting us financially, fiscally. And we need to be angry. We need to say, no, that's enough. Enough is enough. Let's put people in the State House who have some common sense and who are in touch with their constituents.
The other thing, Terry, that
Yes,
that I can say is, I think the media more recently is a big culprit in all this as well.
Oh, don't get me started on that one.
Because again, it depends on the media that you listen to, and I'd like to think that I'm diverse enough that I can listen to VPR and the regular networks, True North, the Daily Chronicle, Guy Pages, to give you a little bit broader sense, because what I found, and I just talked to Vicki about a particular incident where she had a constituent call her and talk to her, and she explained, some of the Vermont laws currently and all that, and a light bulb went off in the individual that, oh, really, and I'd like to think that my constituency as well has enough trust in me as a representative to do my homework, and I voted no for a reason, or I voted yes for a reason. And that reason is broad. It's not just based on, well, this is a good thing to do. It's based on, it's a good thing to do, but can we afford it? How are we going to afford it? It's like the clean heat standard.
Right.
We have a joint fiscal office for that reason alone. Our joint fiscal office sends us a fiscal note on a bill, and it says, this is the intent of the bill. This is what it's going to cost you, the consumer. This is what it's going to cost the businesses, whatever it is. And on that clean heat standard, they said they can't do it. There's not enough information, in the bill, because it was passed off to the Public Utilities Commission to come up with a lot of this. So therefore, that's one of the reasons I didn't vote for it. The governor vetoed it for those reasons. So again. Wouldn't it be nice, like the Climate Council, wouldn't it be nice to create a council to solve our carbon emissions problem, but not have any consideration whatsoever for the cost? And that, to me, is what they did. And then it's up to us. But we kind of, on this one, even passed the buck and said, well, we're going to pass it off to an agency to come up with the rules around this. And that to me is, again, as you said, Vicki, you know, the affordability of folks, especially the elderly and folks on a fixed income, they can't afford $6 and $7 a gallon for fuel oil. I'm sorry. It's just, it's,
Yeah.
you know.
I agree with you. I'm taking this opportunity to thank both of you very much for coming on, and maybe this should be an ongoing thing so that the people in Vermont and, you know, our viewing audience, because now, you know, we have YouTube we can put you on, so more and more and more people can see you. And so we will absolutely do this again. I hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is Terry Difazio for Dial It Up saying, if you didn't like the answers, don't bother asking the questions. We'll see ya.